a pen or a pencil as well, something to scribble with. Maybe a kid next to you has a crayon. So, these people around Jesus, these Jewish people who are God's chosen people, who have listened and believed Jesus, who want dearly to know more about God, are really good mirrors for us. Because they've come and they want to know more, and Jesus says, I can give you freedom. And their first words out of their mouth is, I'm not a slave. I've never been a slave. We have Abraham as our ancestor. We are not slaves. Now, these are God's people. And if you've ever been hearing the history of God's people, of the Jewish people, the story is, the central story, we were slaves in Egypt, and God claimed us and set us free. So that's the story. That is who we are. We are the people that God has set free. And yet, when freedom is offered, these folks say, well, no, we've never been slaves, right? Because we're always very sure that we are okay, that we do not need help. It's just so easy to rely on ourselves. We don't need you, Jesus, they are saying. Not like that. And I don't know if you have ever used those exact words, but I know that for each of us, our nature is to say, oh, but I don't need you, Jesus. Not like that, right? So whether it's a religious system that makes you feel like you have checked the boxes and you are okay, whether it is the heritage that makes you say, look who our ancestors are, we've got this down, we're the right people, whether it is a community like Martin Luther's that says you must live this way, you must check all these boxes, or you cannot be sure of God's love for you. We are the ones who will dispense God's love for you. There are systems that want to enslave us. And in our day and age, it's not so likely to be a religious system because we can opt out of that quite easily and find a different church that has a different style, does a different whatever. But there are still things that want to own us, aren't there? Our stuff wants to own us. It gets so much that we have to buy books that tell us how to get rid of it. Some of us can't even manage to get that organized enough to buy the book to tell us how to get rid of the stuff. Our finances own us, right? Suddenly we have money that we need to worry about keeping, or we don't have money and we lose all our sleep trying to figure out how we will get what we need. Our communities, our responsibilities, our activities that our children are in, our political affiliation, all of it wants not just a part of you, it wants all of you. And if you've ever felt yourself spread a little thin, you know how that is. And this is the truth that these folks around Jesus are telling us about ourselves. This bad news that is, no, we're slaves. There are a lot of things that want to own us. Martin Luther talked about Scripture as being law and gospel. The law is the part that reminds you, yeah, you need Jesus. Right? Yes, we need Jesus. Because of the way our selfishness wraps us in so tight we can't love our neighbor. Because of the way the world wants to get its grip in us. Because of the way that one drink turns into 3 drinks, turns into I don't feel so myself without it. There are always things that want to hang on to us. And so that's the law for us today. So if you would take a pen or a pencil and draw a little line down the middle of your sticky and take a moment to think about what is it that wants to own us these days? What is it that wants to take the place of Jesus in our lives? Maybe in your personal life, maybe in our church, maybe in our communities and in our culture. What are the things that want to own us? And this business of taking a moment to write and reflect, and if you can't tell, we're going to use that door that's been sitting in here for an entire year, is again, as Pastor Tim said, part of our Lutheran heritage, that worship is not a spectator sport. It is our response to God. So on that left-hand column, take a moment. What do you need to be freed from? The truth will make you free, Jesus says. If the Son makes you free, you are free indeed. And that is Jesus. This is the good news for us this morning, is that what we need is standing right there in front of us. What we need has come to us because we can't go to it. The love of God, the forgiveness and grace has come in Jesus Christ to give us all that belongs to him and take what's ours. So all the way to the cross he goes. He takes all those things that want to own us. And it's fun if you think about Scripture, how slippery Jesus is. You know, the religious authorities, they want to get their hooks into him, and he just kind of slides away. And the civil authorities, they want to, and he just kind of slides away. And the rules about who you can talk to and who you can't want to get it, and Jesus just sits down with whoever he feels like. And the rules about who you can touch and who is acceptable, Jesus heals who he wants to heal. Over and over and over again, Jesus is free. And when Jesus comes to us and takes on all those things that want to own us, all the way to the cross, he gives us that freedom. And when he rises from the dead, it's this sign that there is nothing stronger than the love of God. And that's the good news for us. That's the gospel. That's what Martin Luther said Scripture is supposed to be. That is what we should look for and listen for in Scripture, is the law that reminds us that we need Jesus, and then the good news that he is right there before we knew even to ask. Showing up in places we wouldn't have begun to know to look, but already there ahead of us. Scripture is the good news of Jesus. And the Reformation was simply this effort to say, can we clear out the stuff that's in the way? Can we scoot away the things that are making Jesus hard to see? In Luther's time, those were habits and patterns around worship in a language that people didn't know, Scripture that wasn't accessible, ways of relating to the saints that didn't have a sense that we could be connected to God directly. And Luther said, can we move some of those things aside? They're getting in the way of Jesus. That's really what the Reformation is about, is saying, what helps us to hear that gospel most clearly? What helps us to see Jesus and his incarnate love right there in our lives most directly? So on the right-hand column, if you've written a few things that we need to be freed from, on the right-hand side, write what helps you to see Jesus. What points you to the good news of God's love? Maybe that is something in church. Maybe that is reading Scripture. Maybe that is the guy next to you on the bus, or that coworker that is just unfailingly gracious to you when you don't deserve it, or the neighbor who needs you and by doing that draws something out of you that you didn't know was there already. So take a minute, and on that right-hand side, what helps you to see Jesus? How can we as the church help those around us to see Jesus? How can we get out of the way to point to the love and grace of God? So take just a moment to jot that down, and then we'll have a little silence to reflect. And then as we sing, stick it on the door. Luther did not use Post-its, but 500 years, times change. The things that got in the way of seeing God clearly back then are not the same things that get in the way now, and I think we can use our Post-its. So during the hymn, stick it up there, and if you don't have time or you want a little more time to reflect, after communion's a great time too.